Welcome to the Deep Dive,
Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Deep Dive, Emerald City Hockey Seattle Kraken podcast. RJ, there's going to be a lot of stuff to go over. Unfortunately, not a lot of it fun, enjoyable topics because we have to talk about this team and their inability to score a goal.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a fun conversation topic. It has been fun to watch over the last week or so. I mean, I think it's been only 2 games since our last deep dive, but it kind of fits in with the category where, look, the Kraken have 2 goals in their last 3 games, and that's something we have to address.
Yeah, it is. And so we're going to do a proper deep dive into everything in regards to why this team can't score. And it's going to be a big one. It's going to be a good one. I know it's something that a lot of Kraken fans have concerns over, stress over, all of that kind of stuff. And I just want to remind everybody that our wonderful sponsor, the offices of Rico Tessendor, is there in case you ever have some away from Kraken concerns, stressors, things like that. Get into a workplace accident, get into a car accident, something like that, and you are injured. Call Rico. He will help you out in that scenario. We're going to try to help you out with the Kraken concerns and stresses. Rico is there to definitely help you out when an injury occurs.
Yeah, I mean, the two of us, we're not good at dealing with insurance companies at all. Not our
true.
specialty. You know, we can help you with the Kraken stress, but if you get in an accident, you need help dealing with the insurance companies. Let Rico do that for you so you don't have to worry about it. You can focus on getting better.
Yeah, he won't try to do it. He will actually just do it. We're here to try to help you with the Kraken. He'll actually get it done for you. And while we hope none of you ever need his services, the odds say that at some point, someone out there will be involved in an accident, whether on the road, at work, or anywhere in between. And when you are, we hope you call Rico at 425-778-9800 or visit his website, ricotessendor.com, to schedule a free consultation. He's won millions of dollars for his clients and helped thousands of people in the greater Seattle area. And as a fellow member of the ECH community, we know he'll help you too. I mean, maybe we should have made that all around how he'll score you good settlement or something.
Oh yeah, I guess Kraken, there's that. Yeah,
the Kraken aren't going to score a goal for you, but Rico will score you that settlement.
Yeah, I just feel bad for Rico because look, he's dealing with the stress of both. He's got to deal with the insurance companies and deal with the Kraken not scoring goals because he's a Kraken fan. That's how he found us, right?
Yep.
He's got to deal with both. So thinking of you, Rico.
Yep, definitely. And then real quick before we get into everything, want to remind everybody that we do have our next watch party coming up later this week. The very next game for the Kraken, actually. This Thursday, December 4th, 6 p.m. at Queen Anne Beer Hall. You can join us. We'll watch the Kraken take on the Edmonton Oilers again. We'll see if they can score this time. And and that covers both playing the Oilers again and also for the watch party. We'll see if they can score this time. As we promised yesterday on Red Glare, we promised that they can't have fewer goals than they had at the last watch party.
Yep, and that's an ECH guarantee. Yes, will not see -1 on the scoreboard.
Yes, it is. But really looking forward to that one. And I just got something actually in the mail yesterday from my mom that we could add to the prize pool for picking.
Ooh, okay.
Timely holiday gift. If you're somebody who's been around ECH for a little while, you probably know what it is. There may even be something, behind RJ that might give away what it is, but we'll have one of those to give away at the watch party as well. So hope to see everybody at Queen Anne Beer Hall this Thursday at 6 p.m.
Yeah, I mean, gotta go just for that giveaway. I mean, for nothing else. Like that's an awesome giveaway item. Thank you to your mom for getting another one of those ready for us.
Yeah, gotta keep the holiday tradition alive. All right, before we get into all the issues with scoring, let's do quick injury updates. Just kind of get those out of the way, RJ. And unfortunately, as has been the case all too often this season, we do have to talk about somebody leaving the lineup for an extended period of time.
That's right. And I mean, look, this season, you get one back, you lose one almost at the same time, it feels like, just like clockwork for the Kraken. So they get Jared McCann back. That's great injury news. He's been back. But immediately after, pretty much, you lose Jaden Schwartz. And so that's the big injury of the week. Jaden Schwartz out with a lower body injury, roughly 6-week timeline that he's going to miss. And I mean, that's a pretty big blow to the Kraken, especially with him being at the top of their goal scoring list, right? He's tied for the team lead with 8. That one's going to hurt.
Yeah, I mean, tied for the league lead in goals, team lead, yeah, team lead, not league lead. That's what I meant.
What? He's not Morgan Geeky or
Yeah,
anything.
oh gosh, don't even. Um, tied for the team lead in goals. All is the team leader in points. Like this is your leading scorer who is leaving the lineup. Not the greatest timing, considering we're going to spend the rest of this hour talking about how the Kraken can't score a goal, and then you lose your leading scorer in Jaden Schwartz. It is very unfortunate. It's super unfortunate for him. I mean, obviously long injury history, Jaden Schwartz. Hopefully he's able to recover quickly, get back out there, and then once he does re-enter the lineup, he's able to pick back up where he left off here. But the timing of it all is just absolutely brutal, especially just when you get Jared McCann back, right? And maybe Capo Caco's progressing. This lineup just feels like it has not once been whole at all this season.
Right. You just don't have much overlap there. And of course, very next game for the Oilers game, Capo Caco comes back.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, at least there's that on the good side of the injuries. Caco is back, McCann is back, but unfortunately, Schwartz is out.
Yeah, exactly. So, wishing him well. Now, on to the scoring struggles for this team, RJ, because you look at their last 3 games, 2 goals scored over the course of those 3 games. It's not a lot. You've been shut out twice. The goalies on the other side of the shutout, by the way, David Riddick and Stuart Skinner. So not the biggest of names there that have shut you out. The only 2 goals that you have scored are in that Dallas game against Casey DeSmith, both by defensemen, right? Vince Dunn and Brandon Montour. There's some serious concerns here for this Kraken team. They are having an unbelievably difficult time scoring goals. And you look, this is something that if you looked at the roster going into the season, they don't have, outside of Jared McCann, that like true goal scorer, right? That number 1 player is going to go out there and do that. We've talked about that plenty. Lots of Kraken fans have talked about that from a roster construction standpoint. And then you look at the play style that Lane Lambert has this team playing. It is a defensive and conservative approach to the game, right? He is not trying to make these things track meets. He is not trying to get these games into high event affairs where there's going to be lots of goals on either end of the ice. That is just not how this Kraken team is going to play. So there's lots of things kind of working against offense already for this team, RJ. But then, they'd been getting bounces. They were finding things. They were getting that hero who stepped up each and every night, was able to tie a game late and force overtime, things like that. We had talked about for several weeks now that the analytics models have said that none of that was sustainable, right? And we've had that question. Lots of Kraken fans have had that question around the sustainability of what the Kraken were doing. And it does appear that, unfortunately now, the analytics side of things has come home to roost, and this team is just not able to generate enough chances to even get the bounces that they need right now to get something to go in.
Exactly. We knew this was a risk with this team. Look, they're never going to generate a lot of shot quality. The numbers have bared that out from the start of the season. As soon as the luck starts to catch up with you and you don't have the luck on your side, it can start to look like this, where it looks ugly. You're not scoring at all, and you can kind of get into these funks. And they've been getting the bounces. I mean, especially in the third period. I mean, one stat that I brought up, it was like during the Dallas game. So before the Dallas game was over, the Kraken were trailing by a goal in the third, as they have been so often this season, right? They love to do that, but they also love to come back and tie it and get it to overtime. And before that game, the Kraken, when trailing by a goal in the third period this season, in those games, they were 4-2-2. That's ridiculous to have like a winning record like that when you went in games where you trail in the third period by a goal. So at a certain point, you figure that was probably going to even out for the team, and it started to even out. And so like you're seeing, yeah, it's not automatic that they're going to come back when they're down in the third. I think of like the Montreal game where they're down 3-0 in the third, they come back to tie it and at least earn a point. When you're down 3-0 against Edmonton in the third, can you do it? Chances are more often than not, you're not going to get those comebacks. And I think like that's all that we're seeing really is the Kraken are just doing as you would expect most teams to do when they're generating as little as they are offensively.
Yeah. And I don't know. I could make you do a tier list of things that are potentially contributing to this. I think that there's a lot of things, But when I look at how they're playing, particularly at 5-on-5, because we'll deal with special teams in a second. When I think about how they're playing 5-on-5, so many of the things that we had talked about earlier this year when it felt like it was a little bit more sustainable, or we were looking for reasons why it could be sustainable, we talked about the counterattacks, right? Like shut things down in the defensive zone, get that quick breakout, try to get those odd man rushes up the ice. I look at those now and they feel like they're less and less frequent. It doesn't feel like we're getting as many of those each game. And I don't know how much of that is, you had a lighter schedule before, or teams now have tape of how you're going to be playing under Lane Lambert. And so they're making little adjustments to kind of slow that counterattack down on their end. It certainly feels like in some games that is very much the case. Like the Dallas game especially felt like one where Dallas was constantly making adjustments to just take away what the Kraken wanted to be doing.
I mean,
I
even last game against Edmonton, like you noticed the Oilers had numbers back in a way that they normally don't to defend
oh
against those
that
rush chances.
that team never has numbers back.
I know that completely uncharacteristic of that team, but I think now you are starting to see teams making adjustments. I think it largely is that.
Yeah, so I think that's a substantial part of it. So here, rank these, RJ. There's that
Okay.
component of it. Teams are making adjustments. The lack of shooting instinct by basically everybody on this team. And this goes beyond this season. I mean, we've talked about this forever. The Kraken having a lack of a volume shooter and needing somebody like that who's just going to take the shot, particularly on the power play. And then finally, not getting to the net front as consistently as they were earlier this season, right? We were seeing things where it was either, goals by defensemen, but it was because of a screen net front, or we were seeing them get there for rebound opportunities and stuff, but we are just not really seeing that much at all anymore. So in order of which you think is the biggest problem right now, which of those would you say is the biggest? Is it the lack of shooting, the lack of net front, or is it the other teams making adjustments?
I would go adjustments number one, shooting number two, net front number three, because I think they're actually still getting to the net front. Maybe not as much as you'd like to, but still enough, or roughly the amount they were before. You're just not getting the bounces there. I think they were getting the bounces an unnaturally high amount of the time earlier on in the season. But I think teams making adjustments to take away like what the only way you've really been able to reliably score, that's the biggest thing. And then, yeah, the lack of shooting instinct. I think it all ties in with the lack of, necessarily, I guess, talent you have in this forward group, where the kind of talent that teams can't adjust for if you have a lot of talent, right? Guys that can just take over a game, players you can't adjust for. Do you agree with that ranking, or would you rank it differently?
No, I would agree with that ranking because I think that so much of why they were successful earlier this season was because of the system that they were playing and how it did in its own way help promote some offense. But when you see teams like Edmonton have numbers back, when you see teams like Dallas keep their defensemen close to the board so that your wingers can't really get the jump on them, and you're watching these teams kind of do that consistently to you. And again, this was bound to happen. This is what happens over the course of a season. A team, especially under a new coach, plays a certain way, develops their style, starts to have success with it. Other teams see that, start to make adjustments to it. Now it's the Kraken's turn to now make adjustments based off of what other teams are giving them. That is the normal kind of cycle and evolution over the course of a season for teams. So we'll see how long it takes the Kraken to make that adjustment and if it's the right adjustment, because that's largely what ended up happening last year with the Kraken under Dan Bilesma. Was it took them maybe a little bit too long to make an adjustment, and then when they would try to make adjustments, they were never the right adjustment, and they were just never able to really break through, and then the rest of that season just kind of played out that way. We'll see. I do trust Lane Lambert to be able to make adjustments and get this team to execute on those adjustments, but it's really going to come down to, are those adjustments enough? And that's where I do have still the concerns around the net front presence, and I agree that's probably the least concerning, but the lack of shooting mentality, because if Lane Lambert's able to make these adjustments, RJ, and you are able to get those odd man rush opportunities again, or you're able to work on things in the offensive zone so that you have prolonged possessions in the offensive zone, you're cycling more again. I mean, right now the cycle that the Kraken have in the offensive zone, they're not even bothering to really cycle each other into positions to shoot the puck, and then when they are, they're just looking to cycle again. Like, they're not even looking at the net, they're literally looking to make the safe pass like back into the corner or something. And I just think, like, at the end of the day, like, somebody's got to be the guy to step up and just say, we're never going to score if we don't shoot the puck. And yes, it might mean that we lose possession, but if we're already down, losing, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter that you hold on to possession forever if you're already down. That's the tactics you play when you're up. You're not scoring enough to be up right now. You got to just go for it.
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the issues I think is that for so long in a game, they're usually tied. I mean, they
Yes.
they rarely, have a lead or trail after the first period. It's usually stays 0-0 for a long time, and so you kind of get into that cycle, right, where you just want to spend time in the offensive zone and you're not necessarily worried about scoring. Maybe that's an adjustment to make earlier on in games. I mean, you look at the Kraken goal scoring by period; they score way less in the first period than
Yeah.
they do in the second and third. I think that's where there's still some meat on the bone.
Yeah, definitely. So, um, I mean, there's so much, like anything else 5-on-5 that you want to address before we get into special teams. Because yeah, for me, it's those are the three big things that I think are really troubling them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just going to the shooting thing that we were talking about earlier, like shot selection and deciding when to shoot the puck versus hang on to it, because hanging on to the puck is an important part of the Lane Lambert system, because
It
then it
is.
means you're not turning it over, you're not having to defend, and so that's really important. But I thought it was interesting when we were talking with Lane Lambert last week about, and it was kind of a follow up to like the analytics stuff that we'll get into a little bit later, but he talked about categorizing shots into A shots, B shots, and C shots in terms of just quality. And I do wonder kind of where, like, it's probably just an intuitive thing, right? Where
Mhm.
like an A shot would be, right in front of the net, prime scoring position. A C shot might be from way off in the corner somewhere. But he talked about the difference between those and how sometimes you get goals that, or you get an A shot that comes from a C shot, right? It's not always about waiting until you have the A shot and the prime scoring opportunity. Sometimes you need to take a C shot that you realize there's enough traffic there or whatever that could become an A shot. And I think that's, maybe an area to key in there 5-on-5 in your shot selection. It's hard to kind of read ahead in the play, but I think that's what the most creative players are good at doing. And the
Mhm.
Kraken really have a lack of those guys, I think. But those are the kind of instincts I think you need when you still have to play that possession style game.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I just sorted the team based off of shots on goal, and Jordan Eberle does lead the team in shots on goal, 61 in 24 games. That's pretty good. That's approaching that volume shooter kind of spot. Vince Dunn is number 2, Brandon Montour's number 3. And like, look, I get it. Again, part of the system that this team wants to run and play is get bodies in front, get that net front traffic, take a shot from the point. That shot then increases in quality, like you were just talking about, right? That's the idea anyway. But I do think that it's concerning when you've had your only 2 goals in the last 3 games come from defensemen, and 2 of your top 3 scorers, guys taking shots are defensemen. Like, I don't know that there's another team in the league where, one, that is the case, or certainly if you look back at not just this year, but certainly like kind of through recent times, that that's been the case for an offense that's had any sort of sustainability or consistency over the course of a season when 2 of your top 3 players in terms of shots on goal are defensemen.
Yeah, I mean it's naturally variable too. Like you look at defensemen shooting percentages, and they're much lower for
Hmm.
obvious reasons because they're usually shooting the puck from further away. When it's going right, when they're on, we've seen this with Brandon Montour and Vince Dunn. Like they're really on, and you can
Yeah.
generate a lot of offense that way. But it's more susceptible to going cold than when you
Hmm.
have a forward group that's shooting the puck most of the time. And I agree with you. I think that is a concern, but that's the way this team is built. Like you could see that going into the season, just the way the roster is, where all their money's going. Remember, they spend like the second most on defense and goaltending of any team in the NHL. That's just the way this roster is built.
Yeah, I don't think that's built for sustainable offensive pressure and success.
No, I mean that's why they're playing this way, where they're trying to
Yeah.
make every game 0-0.
Yeah. You mentioned the analytics, and the analytics are usually based off of 5-on-5 stuff. So let's talk analytics before we get to special teams. I think
Okay.
just to kind of
Yeah.
transition that way. I think it's a more natural to follow up from here. I know you were looking at the latest data from Sport Logic, so I'll let you kind of kick things off with that.
Yeah, and so I thought this was interesting. Good timing here because these numbers just came out today, right before we're recording the podcast. And thank you to JFresh for posting these. But uh, the new data from Sportlogic came out via TSN that has each team's expected goal differential, their plus minus of expected goals for, and it's broken down into 2 months of the season. The first month is October 7th to November 2nd. Second month is November 3rd to December 1st. So basically, this last month is the data we're getting. And one thing that's been notable to me about the Sport Logic model is that it's way more favorable to the Kraken than pretty much any of the other public models out
Mhm.
there. And so when we were
Yeah.
looking at this last month, when last month's data came out, it showed the Kraken is like kind of a mid team as far as what they were generating. Like, well, that matches where they are in the standings. They're kind of hanging on to a last playoff spot. Okay, this is different than maybe some of the other models that say that the Kraken are among the worst teams in the league based on what they're generating. And so I was curious what the Sport Logic model had to say for this month. And the Kraken's numbers are considerably down over the last month. Their expected goal differential was a minus 0.09 in month one, and it's minus 0.44 in month two. So that is a lot worse. I think it's like eighth worst in the NHL now, whereas it was toward the middle of the league last month. And so I think this is some deeper under the hood reasons for concern where I imagine that the Sport Logic model is kind of closer to what the Kraken are seeing internally. And this tells me that maybe what the Kraken are seeing internally now is a little bit worse than the start of the season.
Right. And it's the story of basically what we're seeing, right? It's trending down. It is not trending up. And I think this goes to what we were talking about also with other teams making certain adjustments. It feels like maybe a small dip should have been there, but that's a pretty big dip from 1 month to another. It feels like there should be that small dip because, teams are seeing what they're doing, they're making adjustments. But if anything, also you could make the argument, RJ, that new coach system after that first month, then you're starting to get into the time where the system starts becoming muscle memory for guys. They're really understanding where they should be. The chemistry is building within that system and that understanding and that level. All of those things should be picking up. It's concerning to me that under a new coach, when things should be kind of picking up in that one regard, we're seeing such a heavy decline on everything else. Like it's one where then I start having questions like as much as yes, other teams are making adjustments and things like that, is that chemistry being built when we're seeing the line blender every night? Are those things becoming muscle memory for these guys? Maybe even too much, right? To my point around the cycle and the lack of shooting mentality, where they're not even like looking to see if the shot's there. They're just assuming it's not and moving on. Those are the things that I'm concerned about, and that I feel like play into why this number is so much lower.
Yeah, and I think I should mention also for the people who are maybe a little bit more skeptical of expected goals and the analytics, it doesn't tell the whole story for sure, but I think it tells an important part of the story. And certainly when we're seeing the results of the fact that, yeah, this team's not scoring actual goals. As Lane Lambert said to me when I asked him about this stuff, he said, you don't win on expected goals, you win on the actual goals.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think it's an important part of the story, certainly when it matches what you're seeing on the ice. If you look under the hood and you can say, okay, well, are they playing better than the results they're getting? And the answer is no, it's roughly in line with what we're seeing. I think it's some more data that just kind of helps confirm that maybe there are some problems with the scoring that where changes need to be made to sort that out. But I do want to get to what Lane Lambert said because I was really curious what he thinks about this. And I don't think I've asked Dave Haxtell or Dan Bilesma about this in the past, really, at least not directly like I did to Lane, what he thinks of expected goals and those numbers that we see like so often during games. We're on our laptops, we've got a million things open, but one of those tabs is either Money Puck or Natural Stat Trick, and we're looking at the expected goals stat. And I know that's something that a lot of fans look at nowadays too. I think fans are, get their information from a wider amount of sources than ever. They're
Mhm.
smarter than ever. And fans look at this stuff too. So I was curious what Lane Lambert thinks about this and how much stock he puts into the numbers, at least what we see publicly. And I thought he gave me an interesting answer. I know most coaches probably don't want to, talk too much details about this stuff or give away trade secrets based on what they're seeing internally. But, as you'd expect, he said, look, it tells some of the story, but not all of it. As he said, you win on the actual goals, not expected goals, but it is something that he looks at and something that he does work with the Kraken's analytics team to kind of get their own internal data. And so I asked him, I said, also, without giving away any trade secrets, of course, I didn't expect him to do that. But, how does the internal data that he's seeing differ from these models that are available publicly to us? And he said it does differ. And one of the ways he said it differs, and I thought this was very interesting because I've never really heard a coach kind of acknowledge this directly, is that he said the team's internal metrics have ways of kind of knowing exactly what you're looking for. And so that I think certainly implies maybe some coach influence as well, where the Kraken are trying to generate maybe a certain type of scoring chance or a chance from a certain area or a chance with certain puck movement beforehand that Lane Lambert has identified as maybe a little bit more dangerous than what some of the other models are saying it is. And maybe that has influenced the model a little bit, which I find that really fascinating because it shows a way that these models could really differ from what we're seeing publicly, in that the chances the Kraken specifically want to generate, but it also does open up a potential for some bias there. If say the coach is like, yeah, I want to generate these kind of chances, and all the data from prior games show it's not as dangerous as maybe a coach thinks it is. I'd like to think the Kraken analytics team is good at staying on top of him with that, and maybe getting in the way of of too much bias getting in the model there. But it's just fascinating to think about.
It is, and it does feel like, yes, you would have to walk a very fine line where, look, we've talked about it forever, right? Certainly with the publicly available expected goal models and things like that, you look at like Money Puck's model, for example, and how it, in my opinion, greatly is biased in favor of just shot location. Right? It takes nothing else seemingly into account as far as where the D is, where the goalie is, where the pass comes from. It is just all about where that shot is taken. And so we've always kind of looked at that and gone, okay, that's, it is definitely not telling the full story there. So I understand specifically for coaches wanting a model that's going to take in what they're actually trying to do out there, because you want that feedback if you're a coach, right? And you're running a certain system, you want to know if it's actually working or not, right? Like, is it generating chances that are dangerous? Because that's the whole point of what I've designed, right? I need to know if I need to make those adjustments and where in the course of things maybe that those adjustments need to be. So I think that there's very valuable reasons why it should take into account what the system is and what the coach wants it to be. But yes, to your point, you also don't want it just telling you what you want to hear, essentially, right? You don't want it to say like, yes, everything is good because we've structured it around what you're trying to do. You are executing on what you're trying to do, so therefore everything's fine, when, the system might just be flawed from the beginning, right? Like, you can execute on a bad system, it doesn't change the fact that then it's a bad system. And I'm not saying in this instance that like the Kraken are running a bad system. We've talked about the offensive limitations it has and why it's structured the way it is, but that would be the concern with that bias, right? Is that like the numbers are backing up that you are in fact doing what you're trying to do. It's just that you probably shouldn't be trying to do that in the first place. And so it is got to be a fine line that the analytics team and the coaching staff kind of has to walk there with each other. And I really do wonder how much open dialogue there is kind of throughout the season, because I imagine then there would be a lot of dialogue at the beginning of the season, through training camp, through the early parts of the season. I wonder how much of that communication and everything kind of goes back and forth in the long run, so that when you do hit a time like now, and we talked about, Lane Lambert needs to start making adjustments based on what other teams are doing. How much does the model really help him there, given that influence he had over it?
Yeah, and I think it'd be helpful to, I'm sure they have ways of visualizing this, and they could probably give them even just like a rink diagram of maybe where you're generating chances or where you're not generating chances now that you were before, and the
Right.
changes over, say, the last month of the season. Like, I'm sure he's getting all, or he has access to all that information. And so I think that would be really helpful. But yeah, I wonder what about that communication. Of course, with this kind of stuff, you can never get too many details from people because you want to keep everything close to the vest. But it's left me with more questions than answers. But I mean, that was going to be the case anyway. It's just so interesting.
I was going to say, never going to get an answer about it to begin with, but it is very interesting. I'm very happy that you asked the question, and kudos to Lane for like giving that response too. Like, that is a pretty good response that you probably don't get from most coaches around the league.
Absolutely. I mean, you compare that to what was it, Adam Foote earlier in the week,
Yeah.
just dismissing the whole thing as, guys in their basement with what was it, like peanuts and cigarettes? What
Yeah.
was so yeah, definitely a different answer than you get elsewhere.
Extremely different. Definitely feels like a coach that's very much with us in the current times there. Yeah. I am also curious, like when it comes to internal models and maybe getting the data that the NHL collects on both the puck and player movements and stuff, how much teams are internally able to utilize that around things like this. Because like one of the things that I always thought, if that data was available, or certainly like when it comes to the like player tracking dots on goals that like the NHL website has and the app has and stuff, you looking at that data over an extended sample size to see if, when your team is running a certain cycle, where are the passing lanes, right? Where are the gaps in the offensive zone then for you to make certain passes, and then you can make adjustments to take advantage of those things, right? Like, I have to assume that data is available to NHL teams. I know this is not totally on topic, but like that's the kind of stuff that I always wished was available to me publicly so that I could be looking
Mhm.
at that kind of stuff, because it has to exist somewhere. Like, so like teams have to be utilizing it in that way. And I feel like that sort of stuff, for at least the way my brain works, and when I think about coaching and systems and stuff, that almost seems more valuable than, yes, shot locations and percentage chance that it should go in on the aggregate, right?
I see what you mean. I mean, like especially with the Kraken, who tend to, I think you said it last week, spam the same like four things or
Yeah.
plays that you're trying to run just over and over and over. If you can see over a large sample, like where specifically where the opponents are lined up, and you're like, yeah, there's this passing lane there. We're not taking advantage of it because don't really see it on the ice, but you can tell them ahead of time, hey, try throwing some pucks there, even if you can't really see it clearly. That could be really beneficial for you.
Right, because so much of what a coach does, and we've heard this from all the coaching staffs that have come through the Kraken, it's watching film, right? It's watching the team that you're going to go play. It's doing all of that stuff. It's watching your own tape. It has to be a part of that, is that you're looking at those things, but I feel like that process could be so sped up and utilized better if you incorporated in that like player tracking data and things like that, just to make your life easier, instead of essentially having to look at it game by game, shift by shift, and see that sort of stuff, right? Like I have to assume that you could have all that data put into a program and it could spit out like a heat map of the zones that everybody's in defensively, and you could then just like works things around that.
Yeah, maybe one day we'll have access to, inside access to this. Obviously not doing what we're doing right now, but like that'd be amazing to
It
just be able to see how it actually works.
it would be. Now anything else on the analytics front? Actually, I'll ask.
No, I mean I've got a million more things I wonder about, but now is
Yes.
probably not the time for it.
Yes. So
I guess I'll say real quick, the Kraken are still on NHL Edge. The Kraken forwards are still skating more than any other team's forwards distance wise per 60. I check that once a week just to see if it's still the case. And yes, it is.
yeah, I mean, hey, look, that's the publicly available data that we have, right?
Yeah, we can see how far they're
We
going.
can see how far they're going. No idea where they're going most consistently. That for that you got to track it at home yourself. So as we transition into special teams, right? Just to kind of again remind everybody of like the overall state. We've talked a lot about 5-on-5 stuff and focusing on that. But look, the Kraken are dead last in the NHL in goals for. They have scored 59 goals through their 24 games. The next fewest goals is the Nashville Predators, who are last in the league from a standings perspective, and they have scored 64 goals. And their goal differential is much worse than the Kraken's, because the Kraken have had good goaltending, good defense, all of that kind of stuff. So like that number is there, but you're still talking about 5 fewer goals than the next lowest scoring team, who also happens to be the worst team in the league. And like that's a situation that concerns me, and that's of course taking all strengths into account. And then the other thing that's been interesting, and I've talked about this a couple times at different places, is the fact that the Colorado Avalanche goal differential, at again all strengths, is catching up to how many goals the Seattle Kraken just have, period. right? And that is just how many more goals the Colorado Avalanche have scored than their opposition in games. They have scored 48 more goals than their opponents have over the course of the games so far this season. Again, the Kraken only have 59 goals total. Like that's it. They're within single digits of the Kraken, and that's just talking about them outscoring their opponents, not even goals total. They're nearly lapping the Kraken in terms of total goals, and obviously Colorado, very talented team, all of that kind of stuff. I'm not trying to compare the Kraken offense to Colorado. I'm just trying to put into perspective how much the Kraken are struggling right now beyond just looking at the short sample size of, say, the last 3 games. This has been, even when they were getting the bounces, a struggle all season.
Yeah, and when they were getting the bounces too, like this is just an overall number for the entire season, and it wasn't enough to put them enough ahead out of last place in goal scoring. Even when they were, early in the season, they were putting up 4 goals a game sometimes, right? 3, 4 goals early on. Still hasn't added up to a whole lot. And I mean, on a per game basis, they are slightly ahead of the Calgary Flames, who played 3 more games than them. But you look at the teams that are around them, though, and it's Calgary and Nashville, the 2 bottom teams in the NHL standings. So like that's not necessarily company you want to have.
No, and you go a little further out, and it's St. Louis, right? Like, again, like
Mm-hmm.
you are talking about all the teams at the bottom of the standings. Again, Kraken doing a much better job than they are at not allowing goals. So there is that, but it is certainly concerning there. One of the reasons that the goal numbers are not great, RJ, is because special teams has been struggling. Power play, did it lull us into a false sense of security early in the season when they were getting a power play goal every game to kick off the year? Because they are now 0 for 14 in their last 3 games on the power play, and the power play percentage for the season has fallen to 16.67%, which is not good. It's well below league
No, it's
average.
not. Yeah, and I mean on net power play percentage, they're 21st in the league. That's around where they're ranking, and it does feel about right, just given the talent that they're throwing out there compared to other teams. Like I do wonder how much you really can get it over a large, like a season long sample size, how much above, say, 20th place you can get it, just given the players you're working with. But I think we were teased a little bit earlier in the season to thinking, well, who knows? Maybe these coaches can get it into around the top 10 or something. But it's hard to sustain that.
Yeah, and it's the talent level, but it's also, for me, the lack of creativity out there, right? And I mean this both from a coaching standpoint and a player standpoint. We still don't see the player movement, right? Like there are teams that do not have a ton of talent on their power plays, but they're able to have better results than the Kraken. And I've been saying this for years. Like this is not a specific to Lane Lambert and his staff. This has been a Kraken problem for a long time. They're able to do that by really, really pushing things as far as, player movement, forcing the defense to have to do handoffs and then creating mistakes around that. They're really trying to confuse the PK out there and take advantage of that confusion. This Kraken team has just never, from a system standpoint, wanted to do that. Under now 3 different staffs, they have not wanted to do that. And then on the player side of things, I mean, yeah, this is where lacking like a playmaker, somebody who can just have the puck on their stick and really make something happen, comes back to get you. This is when you have time and space to operate. This is when you can really put those skills on full displays on the power play. And the Kraken just don't have that guy that can do that. And so, look, there's elements of this power play that I think is better than previous power plays that the Kraken have had from a system standpoint. I love the fact that now that Jared McCann is back, he's back in that one-timer spot. But when you have somebody in that one-timer spot, you can't then just only force the one-timer, right? Like this is where, again, the systems and the lack of creativity on the coaching side of things, I feel like hurts the team. It's great to have the one-timer, but you can't just sit there and spam it over and over and over, because then teams just sit in that passing lane or they sit in the shooting lane and they shot block. And this is what we saw in the Dallas game, especially, was Kraken get the double minor right at the beginning of the game, get 4 minutes of power play time a minute into the game. Incredible opportunity Dallas is handing you on a silver platter. They tried to set up that Jared McCann one-timer so many times. And McCann, first game back in a while, just had a tooth knock, cracked in half, right? He was not calibrated. He wasn't dialed in. The one-timers were there. He was just missing the net. It's fine. That happens. He's rusty. The next subsequent power plays, and they had plenty, the Kraken, in that game. The one-timer was not there, and the Kraken didn't know what to do. They just kept looking for it, and it wasn't there. And then nothing happened. They just weren't even getting shots. This is where, again, the lack of shooting mentality. It's those kinds of things that it always feels like with the Kraken power play, and this year's no different than past years. There is plan A, and then once teams recognize that that's the plan and they take it away, there's no plan B. There is nothing else for them to go to. And I just don't understand why year after year that's the case. And through different coaching staffs.
Right. And I mean, I look at the power play, and you're right. There's a plan A, but there's no plan B. Earlier this season too, and I think the power play, maybe even more than at 5-on-5, it's a matter of other teams just watching tape and taking away the one thing the Kraken want to do. They had so much success early in the season with those plays down low, right? The cross crease right in front of the net, work it down low to somebody and just send it across. They were getting a lot of goals on those, but you know what? Teams took it away. And you said that to me in the Dallas game too. Like, I know the one chance Dallas doesn't want to give up, right? It's the one thing the Kraken want to do. So you have to really be on top of that kind of cat and mouse game, right? Of you make an adjustment, they make a counter adjustment, you have to make another adjustment. And it just feels like the speed of that is maybe outpacing what the Kraken are able to do. Other teams find a way to do it. I mean, they change things up on the power play, but for the Kraken, it seems like that's just kind of eluded them for their entire existence. And so, and it's all the more important too, because I look at, I'm here on Money Puck and I just sorted, the Kraken have the 5th best penalty differential in the league. Like, this is one of those areas where you are, call it luck, call it, just being smart about taking penalties. They don't take a lot of penalties, the Kraken do, but they've been getting a lot of power plays recently where, like, this is where your opportunity is, especially recently, where it's Dallas taking a bunch of penalties, or, Edmonton in that last game, maybe more than all the other games. You have almost 2 minutes of 5-on-3 time. You have 6 power plays in total on the game. And in key moments where you can get yourself into it, like, this is something that needs to be fixed. Like, if I'm looking at the triage list, if I'm Lane Lambert at all the things, if I need to turn things around right away, that might be near the very top.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And again, there's lots of ways of going about it. We don't have to get into everything, but for me, it starts with player movement. I watch other teams' power plays. Guys trade spots. They move around, right? Like, you get the puck on somebody's stick who does maybe have that skill. Kraken have some guys like that. Brandon Montour, Vince Dunn, Jared McCann. These guys are skilled players with the puck. They can make a play. They never leave their one little zone and patch of ice, ever. You watch other teams, guys are moving all over the place, right? They have the puck, they're looking for their shooting lane, or they're looking for a specific play to make. They slide over into somebody else's territory. That guy then goes over and takes back, their spot, right? Like, there's that level of understanding and coordination amongst each other, and it just feels like the Kraken don't have that. And again, because it's happened consistently under so many different coaches, I'm just wondering if it's just a lack of mentality for the actual players that the Kraken have, is that they just genuinely do lack that creativity and that willingness to kind of move around and look for their spot. Instead, they just kind of do that endlessly back and forth passing involving whoever's at the point, right? It just becomes this like high triangle where it's not even a triangle because there's no lower connection. You're just funneling everything between the top 3 players. You're never going to score that way. And certainly you're not going to get great shooting chances. Like, there's no confusion being generated for the PK there. That's just your top 2 PKers just deciding which one has to be aggressive and which side they have to play. They can do that all day long. They're super content to do that all day long on the PK. That's a coach's dream. I just think that that's something that the Kraken have to figure out at some point, whether it comes from the coaches or the players. Somebody's got to step up and just start doing more.
Right. And I'm not holding my breath, because when we talked to the coach, to Lambert, and heard from the coaching staff about the power play going into the season, puck movement was emphasized a lot, not so much player movement. I think really they want to emphasize the puck movement. It was working well for them early in the season. Like, it's the easiest thing to take away, though. If you can take away the lanes that the team wants to move the puck through, which I think opponents are doing, there's not a whole lot you can do. You need to generate that chaos. And even talking with Lambert after oh, was it the Dallas or Edmonton game? Maybe it was the Edmonton game, but he said something to the effect of like where they needed to improve on the power play was after shots or when there's loose pucks or whatever, and the D can't get into their structure. We need to move those pucks quicker, capitalize on those chances. And while I think he's right about that, you can't always count on having that shot, collecting the loose puck, and moving fast enough where the shot has to get the other team out of their structure. There are other things that you can do in player movement, like you said, to get the other team out of their structure. That's the kind of thing that most teams do, where you don't have to rely on a shot and a rebound going your way, which is there's an element of luck involved. And we've seen that go the Kraken's way early this season, not go the Kraken's way recently, but there are ways to make your own luck. And I think they're not really doing that.
Definitely. Now, on the PK side of things, I know you've been digging into numbers there because the penalty kill has also been a problem for this team. It is below 70% right now. Definitely below league average there. And
it's the worst in the league.
Yeah, as we've talked about, like, this is a team that was going to need special teams on their side. Having the league's worst penalty kill is not going to help you with that.
No, it's definitely not. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. Yeah, it's under 70%, 69.2%, or 70.8% net. I always like to look at the net numbers. Either number is the worst in the NHL, though. I think that speaks for itself. You look at the PK recently. I think the Oilers game was a good example where they're 0 for 2 on the PK. Oilers score on both their power play opportunities, and I think against a very good power play, like that's a tough assignment. But you watch those two Oilers power plays, and they got all the Kraken penalty killers into this little tiny area, this little like box type area from the face-off dots in. They're moving the puck around, just compress the Kraken penalty killers in so far that you look at, especially the Nugent Hopkins goal, their first power play goal, and everybody's standing within a few feet of the crease, and the puck movement, it's just so easy when the point for you is as the power play team is like at the face-off dots. And I think that's been one of the issues for them. Like, I think the overall issues, they need to get more aggressive, and we can get to that in a little bit. But I want to focus in on one stat that I found for the PK, because we've talked plenty about Chandler Stevenson on the penalty kill and how he's there to take face-offs. And we know why he's there, right? He's not the best penalty killer, but he can win the draws. And so I wanted to dig a little deeper into that, because I just feel like we've talked about like take Stevenson off the PK forever, but I'm like, okay, what do you have to lose? So Dylan, care to guess? I'm going to have you guess a few of these, where the Kraken rank as far as face-off percentage while shorthanded, because the NHL tracks this and you can sort. Where do you think they rank?
I'm just wondering kind of where they would rank in general in terms of face-offs, because they're not a great face-off team.
I can give you that also. I can just give you their
it looks like it's like
face-off percentage overall,
like 45.7%.
Yeah, it's third worst in the NHL.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's got to be down there for short.
Or care to guess the percentage?
Like it's got no. I'm definitely not gonna do that. Like 29th, 30th.
It's 31st. Okay. So it's second worst in the NHL. 33%. They're 33% on shorthanded faceoffs.
That's unreal how bad that is. I'm shocked that somebody's worse than that.
It's the Anaheim Ducks at 29%. Wow. Yeah, they are worse. But I was wondering, I'm like, okay, maybe this is an instance of Stevenson winning all the draws he's taking, but they lose all the other ones, right? Maybe that's what it is. And so maybe it'd be worse if he's not on the PK. Care to guess what Stevenson's shorthanded face-off percentage is, knowing the Kraken are 33%?
I mean, I'm assuming the reason you're bringing it up is that it's worse somehow. So I'll say a quarter, 25.
It's 35%. So it's a little higher than the team. But not good. He is not the team's best shorthanded faceoff taker. It's Matty Beniers at 47%.
Hey, let's go, Matty.
Yeah. So, I mean, good stuff from Matty here. But Stevenson, he's winning 35% of the draws, which that number alone would still be second worst in the league. If Stevenson just took all the faceoffs, went at that rate for the Kraken, that'd still be second worst in the NHL in terms of shorthanded faceoff percentage. Now, I was wondering, though, like by players, because it's a tougher assignment. Like I look at the shorthanded faceoff percentage around the league, and like 50% is actually pretty good. 50% is like 10th best in the league. I guess power play teams just win more faceoffs, and that makes sense. You've got more guys you can kind of crash into the circle there. So, you're grading on a curve here, but I wanted to compare him to some other players. So out of 99 players that have taken like 10 or more PK faceoffs, that I just did 10 or more faceoffs, Stevenson ranked 79th out of 99.
It's not good.
So I look at maybe the advantage he's giving you in the face-off dot, or advantage in air
Yeah.
quotes, right? It's not that much. Like I really don't know. And maybe face-off stats are a little weird too. Like sometimes a win isn't, the team that ultimately ends up with the puck. Like a lot of it is what the wingers
Yeah.
do. But that's the first area that I'm looking at and thinking, well, why is he on the PK? We know he's not very good defensively. I think that's something that, even probe Stevens people would acknowledge, but
Yes.
he's there for the faceoffs.
Right.
I don't know how much value you're really getting for him, at least shorthanded
Mm-hmm.
on those faceoffs.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like a lot, right? Like based on those numbers, it doesn't seem like a lot. And obviously it's a team issue with the face-offs. It's not specific just to him. But you're also talking about, like, in that instance, a 15% drop from his like total face-off win percentage to his shorthanded face-off win percentage. Like, that's a huge drop off. Like there is something about those draws that is a struggle for him compared to a normal face-off.
And I wonder, I mean, this is something I would love to just ask him about. Like, is there something different about taking a face off on a PK versus in another
Mhm.
situation? Because, and I could phrase it like, look, league wide numbers are lower on PK face
You
off
don't even
percentage.
need to throw numbers in. Just ask him. What's the difference between, a penalty kill, a shorthanded face-off versus a 5-on-5 face-off? Is there a lot different because you don't have that extra guy where other teams are crashing in on you? Like, is there something there?
Yeah.
If you leave
And
the
I know
numbers
also
out.
like you have to put your stick down first if you're in the D zone or whatever. Like
Yeah.
that should be like D zone versus O zone. Like I'm sure he would mention that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is my homework assignment here to ask about next practice we get out to.
You could ask Maddie too. Like, I would love to know from Maddie because
Yeah.
that would be interesting from any center, really.
Yeah. I mean, he's not taking nearly as many shorthanded draws, but he's doing pretty good. 47% is pretty good.
That's better than his or no, 47 is roughly his normal face-off percentage. So he's not experiencing a drop off. So maybe Maddie
Right.
would say nothing.
Yeah. I mean, he ranks 44th out of the 99 players in the
Yeah.
NHL in that metric, but that's still fairly good.
Right.
Especially
Again,
for a young player like him.
yeah. But when it comes to Stevenson being on the penalty kill at all, this is a team where this should be the one aspect of hockey that this team is actually built for, right? Like, you have all of these players that are not great offensive talents. That is not where their skill set lies. They're good two-way players. They're good defensively. You have very much structured this roster around that. You brought in Lane Lambert to coach them and have the entire mentality of the team be defensive and structure based. And then you're sticking like the one guy that doesn't fit that mold out there on your PK, and oftentimes PK one, like legit getting some of the most PK time of any forward that you have. It just doesn't make sense in that regard, and certainly if the faceoffs aren't there, then it truly doesn't make sense, in my opinion. Anyway, that's kind of wild. Going back to the structure though, for the PK and the lack of aggressiveness that you mentioned, remember back like under Dave Hackstall, and we would see the PK and they were in that, like, triangle plus one diamond formation, whatever you want to call it, and they were so aggressive, right? Brandon Tanev would be flying around, really forcing other teams to have to move the puck quickly and forcing other teams' power plays to basically look like the Kraken power play, where they're just having to send it back to the point every time because they just don't have the time and space to ever push it down low. We have not really seen that this year at all. It is a much more conservative penalty kill, in my opinion, what this group is doing, and it's obviously not working. The numbers say it's not working, but it doesn't work from the eye test either, because we're seeing teams be able to get one-timer chances that, certainly the Kraken aren't getting, but in theory you shouldn't ever allow, and a lot of it is because of how close to the middle everybody is playing. Like, I think of, whether it's the Dallas game, the last couple San Jose games, right? Like, they would have Celebrini over there looking for a one-timer. The passing lanes were open to him, right? Like the Sharks really struggled on that in the second game on the power play, but like the passes were there that they wanted. There was just always something else that went wrong for them. Those kinds of things, like that feels like it should be easy to take away. It's obviously easy for other teams to take away from the Kraken. I don't know why the Kraken are kind of struggling so much to not just have all four guys loaded up in the slot.
Yeah, and I mean it's the kind of thing that like I think it's an extension of their 5-on-5 strategy, right? Where it's play hyper conservative, make sure you take away the most dangerous areas of the ice. Doesn't work 5-on-4
Mm-mm.
because from the perimeter it is still dangerous if you sink that much into the zone. And like I think this is an adjustment the team really needs to make, and I hope it's one that they do because look, they've got a few days off now
Mhm.
between now and their next game against the Oilers. Like this would be the time to implement any of these changes that we're talking about on special teams because that's the easiest place to implement changes. I just feel like what do you have to lose? And we saw that Hackstall PK wasn't always that aggressive, right? That was a conscious shift that they made
Yeah.
in season, right? Remember, it was too conservative. Their numbers were really bad. They made the decision to get more aggressive, and it got better. I think they need to do something like that right now. And again, I asked, what do you have to lose?
Yeah.
Like it's not going to get, I don't think it'll get worse than what it is right now. And at least you put some pressure on the opponent's sticks. And I think it's something that teams, if they're watching film, they won't be ready for it.
Hmm.
Because you got to know, right? If you're another team watching film, you're like, yeah, they're going to give us all the time and space we want.
Yep.
We're just going to inch in, inch in until we're right on top of them. And if you start being aggressive right now, they're not going to be ready for it. I mean, it's probably going to have a positive effect for you that'll maybe wear off after a few games and teams realize what you're doing. But still, I don't see why not.
Yeah. And like another one that's easy from like an eye test standpoint, if you look at these games, is look at where the one-timers are coming from for the Kraken, and it's always high up in that face-off circle. You look at where the other teams are getting it, sometimes it's even below the face-off circle, right? Like they're able to get so much closer to the net, so much further down into the zone. Yeah, it's a steeper angle, but if you've got a good shooter, that's not a problem. That actually is beneficial because it means the goalie has that much more to try to get across and cover. That I think is another one where it's just like, again, that's showing this distance between what the Kraken are able to do and what they're allowing other teams to do against them. And that's something that just kind of concerns me. And it's literally as simple as that. It's, what, 15 feet of difference, but it makes all the difference in the world when you look at, one-timer success rate.
Yeah.
And
And you
yeah.
do give, like, when you do get more aggressive, you give away, say, the one timer pass that's maybe a little up higher,
Right.
but it's, a further angle the goalie has to get across the net. Like, you do give up those sometimes, less
Hmm.
often, but you give it up sometimes. I think you're situated so well with Joey Decord, the goalie you have in net most games. He cheats over on those anyway. He's already across for those
Hmm.
anyway. Like, he's pretty good at that. Like, I bet he can erase some of the like the mistakes are going to happen when you get
Yeah.
aggressive. I think you have a goalie that can erase a lot of those.
I agree. I agree. So we'll see there. Anything else on special teams before we kind of run through some players here real quick?
Nope, that's all I got. Let's get to the players.
All right, so let's talk. We'll start with the more veteran guys. I think the number one player we have to talk about, especially after that last Edmonton game, is Mason Marchment. I mean, obviously there's already been a lot of talk around him so far this season. People have liked some elements of his game, the way he can pester other teams and the, kind of the personality that he has out there, how fun it is to watch him skate around because at some point he's going to, giraffe and look kind of crazy and that's fun. But on the flip side, he has been, you talked about the Kraken being a fairly disciplined team. He's been by far and away the least disciplined player on this team, or certainly it feels like that a lot of the time. He has struggled to make a big impact offensively, only has 2 goals on the season, 11 points. He's a sub half point per game player for the Kraken, and yet at times he's been getting first line ice time, and fans have questioned that maybe. This last game, though, showed another element of his game and his play style that you and I are not a fan of, and we knew that was kind of a part of Mason Marchment, but really it seemed to almost, at least for us, overshadow the rest of that game. And I'll let you go through it all because I know you have a strong opinion, and I thought you worded it very well on the post game debrief that you did. But it's definitely a concerning thing with him.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll get right into it. And I was expecting maybe a little more backlash than I got, just because I know it's tough when it's a Kraken player here. But basically, what happened in the Oilers game, for those who didn't see it, Mason Marchment kind of came in with a late blindside hit on Darnell Nurse, and it was below the goal line too, like below the Kraken goal line. I know there's something, you talk to players, I'm a little extra predatory about that hit when you have a forward coming in behind his own goal line to make a hit. But anyway, levels that hit on him. There's no penalty called. I think there should have been one. The Oilers certainly. I talked to Ryan Nugent-Hopkins after the game. He certainly felt that way, that should have been called. But anyway, that's a hit, and I think it's a potentially dangerous hit too. You're getting a guy up in the head from the blind side. His helmet pops right off.
Hmm.
I think that's an important factor in the hit there too. So he delivers that hit, and then immediately Adam Henrique, the Nurse's teammate with the Oilers, steps in to try and defend his teammate, tries to get Marchment to square up and fight him. Marchment refuses. He will not fight Henrique. Henrique's like, got him pressed up to the glass, won't do it. And through the rest of the shift, every Oilers player was kind of coming by being like, come on, fight me, fight me. And he wouldn't do it. And throughout the rest of the game, the Oilers were trying to get Marchment to answer for that hit. It's kind of part of the hockey code, right? If you deliver a dangerous hit, you are expected to square up and fight. And that's the way that these things are solved, really, so that players don't get hurt with the team trying to do some retaliatory hit the other way too. Like that's the reason this is solved this way. So if guys have a chance to square up, face each other, face to face, and have that fight in, and then the matter is solved. But throughout the rest of the game, Mason Marchment, not only did he, refuse to fight, but he would also go right by the Oilers bench and was smiling at them and trying to, taunt them, goading them. And yet every time when someone would go after him, and Nurse did do it himself too. I saw comments saying, well, the Nurse should fight him himself. Nurse tried. A lot of players on the Oilers tried. And Marchment just would not drop the gloves, would not square up, would not answer for the hit that he made. And I don't like that. That's gutless behavior to me, and that's how I phrased it on the post game debrief. I think if you lay a hit like that, and certainly if you're going to be, throughout the rest of the game, kind of taunting the other team, you have to square up and drop the gloves. That's part of the hockey code, and that's how it's settled. And Marchment didn't do that, and I don't like it. I mean, as Kraken fans, I compared it to Pospisil, to Thomas Pospisil, something that we know that Kraken fans have been quite upset, I think rightly upset over, where he hits Vince Dunn, dirty hit along the boards, and he won't fight. He will not drop the gloves. And no matter who goes after him, no matter who tries to get in a fight, he will not answer for that hit. And he continues to get in people's faces and play dirty and deliver those hits. And that's something that bothers me no matter who does it, no matter what team it's on. And so I feel like I need to call out Mason Marchment for it, just to be consistent, because I don't want to see that in the game. And you look at how it affected the Kraken too, because yes, I think it distracted the Oilers a bit. The Oilers took another couple penalties just trying to get at Mason Marchment, get him to answer there. Kraken couldn't take advantage of it, but I think ultimately the Oilers were able to channel that anger into scoring some goals. And like, look, if we can't make you pay through a fight, we're going to make you pay on the scoreboard. And I think the Oilers, a team that, by the way, has just been a wreck the last week or whatever, that galvanized them, and that made them play in a way that I don't know that they would have played otherwise. And so I don't think it benefited the Kraken there. I think to the contrary, it benefited the Oilers. I just don't like seeing that stuff from Mason Marchment. I mean, I'll let you talk on it now, but let's, watch the post game debrief for my or social media for my feelings on it too. Like, I had a couple posts that I felt like I was being kind of hard on him, but maybe rightly so. And at the end of the game too, like Marchment there is, shoving an Oilers player and then smiling at him, hiding behind the linesman. Like, it doesn't really have the same effect when you're down 4-0 in the game at that point. Like, you're not getting in their heads, you're not messing with them. I don't know. I don't like how that went down.
Yeah, you can't, just like with Pospisil, and we've talked about this, like, you can't be an antagonist like that and then never answer the bell for it. Like, it just comes across wrong. It comes across like, cowardly, whatever you want to call it. But if you're going to play with that edge, you have to fully play with that edge. And that includes that when you misjudge a situation, or right, and I'm trying to give benefit of the doubt here to Marchment, right? You misjudge the situation, or something happens just differently, right? Guy moves last second on you, whatever. The way that hockey has always handled this, and again, the only reason that fighting is still in this sport is specifically for these moments, so that things do not continue to escalate, so that there is some form of not retaliation, but self-policing amongst the players to also dissuade hits like this from happening in the first place. Because the idea is that I'm not going to go level a dirty hit because I'm going to then have to answer for it, right? Like, I'm going to have to go through something myself. Now the equation is no longer worth it, right? Like, that is the whole idea around the code and why fighting exists in this sport. And when you have a player just ignore that, and it just feels like you're going against the sport itself in a lot of ways. And I think that it's just one of those things, like, obviously, would we handle things like that off the ice? No, right? Like, that's
Yeah.
not the proper way to handle your life. Somebody wrongs you, you expect them to square up, and you're getting into a fight on the sidewalk, right? Like, that's not how life works. And so I understand the arguments around fighting and everything in hockey, but it is within the rule set that exists, right? It is part of the game still. And it is in at times still a necessary part of the game, and you have to be able to go through with it, especially if you're going to be an antagonist. If you're going to have antagonistic behavior out there on the ice, that is something that just goes along with it. And I know we don't have enforcers the way that we used to, and that the game has become more skill based, and it is built more around guys like Mason Marchment, but there is something about it that just feels wrong when you see a guy do a hit like that and then so aggressively refuse to answer for it in any way whatsoever. Because even if you don't feel like the hit is dirty, when they're really coming after you like that, like, your pride's on the line at some point. At some point, that equation shifts, right? It goes from you feeling like you didn't actually do anything wrong, or Darnell Nurse deserved it, or whatever, to now you just look like a jerk. and
Hmm.
and you look like a coward, and you look like somebody who doesn't want to deal with the repercussions of your action, whether you think it's totally justified or not. That is what's happening, and it just made Mason Marchment look really bad. It's when coupled with things like the diving, right? And he was called for an embellishment penalty not that long ago. It just kind of creates this, idea of that player in my mind, and it's just not one that I like, or one that I particularly want to support personally, right? And you then again factor in a third thing, and that is the lack of production. And all of a sudden I'm sitting here like, why is this guy even on the team? Like he should not be on this team past the deadline, right? There's no point in re-signing him. There's no point in keeping him past the deadline. I hate seeing this stuff that we saw last game. I hate him always trying to sell hits and try to get penalties, right? He doesn't get called for the embellishment often, but it's there every time, right? He's always flopping around on the ice. I just hate watching him when this stuff happens. And unfortunately, this stuff happens more than the fun two for flinching stuff, right? As awesome as that stuff is, this stuff feels like it's much more of a consistent part of his game. And you're doing all that for what? To contribute 2 goals in 23 games? Like, I don't I don't get it. I don't support it, and I'm kind of like, this was like the thing that made me just done with him being a member of the team.
Yeah, I'm with you too. And I mean, you heard the way I talked about it right after the game. I was certainly feeling it at that time. I'm with you. I'm kind of just done with what he brings. It's certainly the bad outweighs the good.
Yeah. Yeah, and the bad penalties and everything, like, it's just not there for me. And yeah, so there was another thing. Oh, and the other thing is also, it's a bad hit. Like, if Darnell Nurse was a couple inches to the side, or that hit happens at a slightly different angle, Darnell Nurse is going dangerously into the boards. Like, I know there's people that haven't liked the comparison to the Pospisil hit because it injured Vince Dunn, and how much worse it looked because of the boards at play, but that's just circumstantial. Like, that doesn't, like, the intent was still there. He wanted to blindside Darnell Nurse. Like, he did not care about if that was going to injure Darnell Nurse. He just wanted to lay that hit out. Like, and we've talked forever about how the Department of Player Safety never takes intent into it, and they only ever punish when a player is injured or the situation ends up poorly, and how we've talked forever, and we've been very consistent about this over on Red Glare on Patreon. You like, that doesn't work. You can't only punish it when, like, the guy gets caught, essentially, right? Like, you have to at some point be consistent and levy fines and suspensions to guys like Jacob Trouba, who was trying to throw elbows like crazy last postseason, and just because none of them ever really hit somebody square in the jaw, we just let it all go. It's like, no, he's still genuinely trying to concuss people out there. Like, that's a problem, and that's behavior that needs to be, dealt with. That's the same thing here. Like, his intent was to catch Darnell Nurse off guard and hit him dangerously, and he did that. And it's just because of how Darnell Nurse was angled that he didn't fall headfirst, helmetless into the boards. and end up in a bad situation. And I think like that needs to be talked about too. I know the Pospisil hit did result in injury and this one didn't, but I think intent matters. And for me, that intent is roughly the same, if not exactly the same.
Yeah, agreed completely. And we are consistent on this, by the way, whether it's a Kraken player doing it, whether it's another team's player doing it to a Kraken player, whether it's just two other teams, and nobody we follow is involved. Like we're pretty consistent on this. And I know, I mean, some Kraken fans might be thinking about the Draisaitl elbow that I think certainly kind of had intent later in that game going after Marchment. And I mean, yeah, I think there's a problem there with the intent as well. But I would, again, it doesn't make it okay, but I'd point out that's the kind of thing that happens when you don't square up and fight prior to that. The whole existence of fighting and all that is so plays like that Draisaitl elbow, which again could have been way worse. He was trying to take his head off with an elbow. That could have been a concussion. Fighting exists so that play doesn't happen later on in the game.
Right. No, I mean like that's exactly it. Like when I saw the Draisaitl thing and I saw all the people like freaking out because I wasn't watching the game live about Leon Draisaitl, and I was like, okay, let me go see it. And then I saw it, but understanding the context of the Marchment hit earlier, I'm like that. Like I'm with you. Like that's literally what the fight is to get you away from. And like yeah, getting into a fight sucks. It's not a fun experience, right? Like you're getting punched. It's not a good time. But you know what? It's better than catching a stray elbow, right? Like and especially if it was in a worse spot than that, right? Like he was kind of already engaged on the board and Draisaitl came in at an awkward angle and stuff. Like it could have been even worse. But like those are the kinds of things where then you're talking about, a concussion, broken jaw, stuff like that. Like, would you rather just get into the fight and you can kind of, you're not feeling it or whatever, especially in this situation when you've given a dirty hit, you can clutch, grab, go down a little early, whatever, get out of that situation, but you at least did it. And I think that's exactly what you got to do. I mean, hockey has so many unfortunate incidents in the past around retaliation and things like that. And I don't want to see I don't want to have to see more Wikipedia articles dedicated to incidents like that, right? Like Bertuzzi more. Like that stuff should never happen after that. But when you're guys like Pospisil, when you're a guy like Mason Marchment, you're opening the door for that possibility. And, I just don't want that. Shouldn't happen. On to some other guys. I mean, Jared McCann has returned. He looks pretty good to me. Still a little rusty at times with things, but he's looking like, for the most part, Jared McCann.
Yeah, and it's to be expected, a little bit of rust when you miss 17 games. That's just going to happen, so I'm not worried at all.
Yeah, we talked about Chandler Stevenson earlier. This last game, very little ice time. Team was down, trying to get back into the game. I think second fewest ice time as a member of the Kraken. Do we think we might be seeing something there? Something that a lot of Kraken fans have been looking forward to?
I don't think so. I need to see it multiple games. I think that was just kind of an anomaly. I wouldn't expect a continuation of that personally.
Yeah, I'm not holding my breath for it either. On the flip side, looking at some of the younger players here, we talked a lot about Shane Wright last week and the ice time starting to dip for him and the idea that he was maybe becoming a fourth liner this week with the 2 games. He was a fourth liner. He was just straight up line rushes, fourth line centerman. Shane Wright is on the fourth line.
He is. And that's something that like we were kind of a week ahead of it really because we were just wondering if that was going to be the case. But yeah, it confirmed it is the case. Shane Wright is a fourth liner right now. That's how the team is playing him. And also you mentioned Stevenson having such little ice time last game. I would think, okay, well, that's great. Maybe Shane Wright got some of those surplus minutes. No, he didn't. He had the second least 5-on-5 ice time on the team, just ahead of Ty Karche in that game. So Shane Wright is not stepping into those minutes. And so it's a conversation we had last week. Go back and watch the clip from it last week if you want to hear more about, what we think of that, what it means for the team. We've already covered it. I'll post something on social media today too, because it's more relevant now. But it is the reality right now.
Yeah. And again, part of it's he's not stepping up for it. Somebody who is stepping up for it though, and who was the beneficiary of that reduced Chandler Stevenson ice time was Berkeley Catton though. And we talked about it up on the press bridge between us and with other people. After that Dallas game, it felt like Berkeley Catton's best game as a member of the Seattle Kraken, even though he wasn't necessarily on the score sheet or whatever. But it felt like he was really stepping up in a way that we've been hoping to see from him. Games maybe starting to slow down for him. He's able to start making more plays. He's growing more confident in what he's going to be able to get away with out there. And kind of continued into that Edmonton game. Like Berkeley Catton is just really starting to feel like he's truly and genuinely taking that next step.
Yeah, and he looked dynamic in a way that he hasn't a ton this season. We've seen flashes of it, but we know that that's what he can do. That's why he was drafted 8th overall, is because he has those plays. And I mean, in the Dallas game, he just looked like a different player than we've seen at the NHL level. And so that was really great to see from Berkeley Catton. I mean, it's a shame. Look, he's been so close on so many occasions to his first career goal. Like he's just not getting the puck luck at all. He's the one Kraken who's not getting any of the puck luck really at all this season at any point. So again, rooting for him there. Like he's done enough to deserve it. But what I do like seeing is that he gets 13:05 of ice time in that Dallas game. It's close the whole way. I totally get it. Rookie, you're not going to play him a ton. But you look at that Oilers game where it's not quite as close. You're down. You need to get some offensive jump. Plays over 17 minutes in that one. And I think that's just a continuation of Lane Lambert. He's willing to reward players who are playing well, who are doing that extra little something to earn that ice time. Like, and he's pretty consistent about that. And so like good on Berkeley Catton for earning those opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's well deserved. Like that happened. Again, even the assists have been hard to come by, right? Like 2 in his last 5 games. That's not necessarily there. He was able to get that one in the Dallas game, but he's playing well enough to earn more, just like with the scoring. Like at some point it's going to happen, and it's exciting to see him play the way he's playing right now, because he's playing with all the promise that he showed as a junior player, right? And I just can't wait to see him step up and hopefully really bring that full allotment of creativity and playmaking that we know he has in him to the NHL level. Talk about needing some of that on like the power play, places like that. Berkeley Catton could be that guy who can kind of help that power play take that step forward. Once things kind of continue for him, I'm genuinely curious now if they're going to send him to World Juniors. I don't know that they can. Like he's turning into like a top 6, maybe even top line player for them at the moment.
I think the Schwartz injury might be the biggest factor. If you're going to be missing Schwartz through that time, the spot's there for Catton. And it's there for him to get more opportunity. I don't know how you send him to World Juniors if you've got that opening on the left wing where Cat can just slide in.
And right when he's taken a step forward too, like the last thing you want to do is reward him by sending him away from the NHL level.
Yeah. I wonder, because I know World Juniors means a lot to these players, right? I do wonder kind of what he'd want to do, because I could see a good argument for both sides as a player. Like this is my last chance to go win a World Juniors here, and like I could see both sides.
He's been part of some really disappointing Canada teams too, so like it's not like, oh, I got gold last year so I'm good. That was far from the case.
Yep. So I could see it going either way, like as far as what he would want. But if I'm the Kraken, just keep him around. You want him around.
I think you have to keep him around at this point, personally. Unless the player really wants it, or you really think he's going to get something out of that. Like he is going to really flourish there and kind of build even more confidence or something. I think you just got to keep him around, and especially if you're going to be giving him ice time like he got in that last game. All right, that is going to do it for this week's episode of The Deep Dive. I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank the wonderful law offices of Rico Tessendor for sponsoring the podcast like it does each and every week. And while we hope none of you ever need his services, the odds say that at some point someone out there will be involved in an accident, whether on the road, at work, or anywhere in between. And when you are, we hope you call Rico at 425-778-9800 or visit his website, ricotessendor.com, to schedule a free consultation. He's won millions of dollars for his clients and helped thousands of people in the greater Seattle area. And as a fellow member of the ECH community, we know he'll help you too. I can't wait to see everybody at the watch party on Thursday, 6 p.m. for the rematch against the Oilers. We can see if the Kraken worked on special teams, stuff like that, over at Queen Anne Beer Hall. Really looking forward to that one with everybody. But until then, gotta say, see y'all next time.
Hey everyone, before we go, we just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our awesome patrons over at patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey, especially our Terror of the Deep patrons.
Thank you so much for making all this possible. We really appreciate your support.